and sisters around the globe. Before we hear review of wondrous Lotus Sutra, let us pay our respects for these teachings and explanations to the Buddha and Master Zhen Yan by making 3 sincere bows. Please rise, palms together. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. And a bow to our beloved Sifu who could join us today. Kak An. Brother Joe, please take over, Kak An.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. And once again, we're on this Saturday, wonderful Saturday morning, very hot. And once again, we're here for our Jing Wondrous Lotus review. And I'm Joe, very glad to be here to do the sharing with you. Together, we're hoping to learn more about what Master Cheng Yen has for us in the past week. Now, previously, I think the last time I did this presentation, it was about 2 months ago. It was back in June. And that was, a lot of things has happened in the 2 months. The most recent were, there were the double typhoons that came, and that's why last week I wasn't here either. But it was something that, you know, in the 2 months time, I had also gone to Malaysia and see all of our family, Dharma family, and had Julian for the first time in my life. And it was indeed something that was memorable. And also it was a large part of it was the master's month-long trip around Taiwan. And so that's what happened in the 2 months. And that really showed me to not take anything for granted, because I think back, you know, about 2 months ago, I would not have foreseen that I would not be with you for so much time, so long. And so it is something that I must really think deep to cherish all of this. So today, this week summary, we're already into chapter 15. Last week, Brother Yoping has already gone into this, but there are some other things that I wanted to talk about, and also there was talked about today as well in chapter 15, and we're going to go into that. And then there are the hidden figures that we're going to talk about as well. So chapter 15, emerging from the earth, and just from the name, it's already very, very interesting. In that, if you recall, back in I think it was chapter 11, when it was the emergence of the treasure tower. The name of the chapter in Chinese, it was literally, it was the chapter of seeing the treasure tower. Okay, now this particular chapter, emerging from the earth, literally for the Chinese, it actually says coming from the ground or emerging from the ground. Okay, now the difference is, yes, something in both of these chapters, something come out, but in chapter 11, we knew that it was treasure tower. But in chapter 15, they didn't tell you what came out. The name of the chapter just says, coming from the ground. Now, that is something that I found to be wide open. The meaning of this is that there's so many things that in this chapter, and we're not even into the main part yet, okay? The story is just about to be developing. So we're still in the beginning of this chapter 15. And it was already packed with explosive metaphors. So many things with numbers, with the imageries, with the metaphors, and all of this. And we're not even at the gist of this chapter yet. So what I wanted to say is that this chapter, unlike the previous ones, it tells you exactly, yeah, there are some metaphors, but it tells you the images very clearly. But just from the name of it, it's already leaving open on what is coming out of the ground. I'm not telling you, I'm just letting you know that some things are coming, and please find out as you read more into it. Okay, so so that's the name for the name. So before going on to this chapter 15, this is what I talked about. I would like to go into the causes or what brought us here. If we recall back in chapter 12, there were also bodhisattvas from other worlds. Okay, so in this chapter 12, which was the chapter on the Devadatas, if you remember, if you recall, that was the treasure tower has already came out. It was chapter 11, right? So the abundant treasure Buddha was inside, and just as the chapter on Devadatta was about to end, there's this bodhisattva from the other world whose name is Wisdom Accumulated, who said to the teacher, he's a disciple of the abundant treasure Buddha, said to him and said, gee, look at the time. Isn't it time that we leave, right? And so, remember what happened? And Buddha, our Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, upon hearing this, did not wait until the abundant treasure Buddha to say, maybe it's time, or no, let's stick around. No, let's stick around. No, the Buddha didn't wait for that. Shakyamuni Buddha said, wait, you know, hang on. Yes, you, I'm talking to you. There's someone that I'd like you to meet. And that person was Manjushri, right? Manjushri. And he's coming, and I'm sure you guys should, you know, talk among yourself, and then you can exchange your ideas and learn a little bit about each other, because it seems like you don't know what we're doing here. And it seems like you don't know what we're doing here. You don't know our Saha world, and you're about to leave. Please don't stick around, right? So, and the story from that point on is history. Like, if you don't remember, let me quickly brief that for you. So they were about to leave, and the Buddha said, no, stay. And you know what? This is exactly what Master says. The timing was always so impeccable. The timing was perfect, you know? Just as Buddha says, no, I want you to meet somebody, you know, boom, Manjushri just came from the oceans and riding this, the lotus flower, sitting on the lotus flower, and with thousands and thousands of the beings from the ocean that was being transformed, that had already been taught, followers of Manjushri, and they all came together. You know, you can imagine, you know, 5,000 people leaving, and you can imagine even a lot more, 10 times, 100 times of that number of bodhisattvas all coming in at the same time that Buddha says, wait, I want you to meet somebody. So amazing. Time is always perfect. Just like what Master has been saying, right? Every time she comes into a chapter talking about something always happens to match exactly what she's saying. So this is exactly like that. So Manjushri came over and then explained to this wisdom accumulated. I'm recounting the story of chapter 12. Okay, at the end, it was only toward the end. We all remember who was Devadatta, but towards the end, it was this part. And so Manjushri began to say, I was at the Dragon Palace in the ocean, and I was doing this, and then wisdom accumulated, apparently don't know what these people are, and say, well, aren't these kind of sea creatures? They're not quite good at learning the Dharma. And are you sure you really can teach them? How did you do that? And how many did you do? It must be difficult. And so it must be like counted with one hand. And so the hand it was, but it was a slap in the face. No, it wasn't a slap in the face. It was a gentle touch in the head and say, no, you don't know what we're doing here. In fact, it wasn't counted with one hand. It was infinite. So all these are the disciples, the followers that were enlightened because it was the Lotus Sutra that was preached to these sea creatures, okay? And then there was this other dragon maiden that show up and then transform right away and got enlightened. So that was the gist of the story toward the end of chapter 12. Trust me, it was a very, very exciting story. If you have forgotten about that, remember what Master said today about 5 wisdoms, right? Number 2 is don't forget all the things that happened in the past. We have to remember. Don't just let it leave your memory. Okay, so that was chapter 12. Okay, so that there was already encounters of the third kind. Now it wasn't the third kind. The encounter of the other world bodhisattvas and abundant treasure Buddha. So there were already encounters at that time. So now let's move on to so this is what so encounter. But that was chapter 12. Now we move on to chapter 13, which is encouraging devotion. So after the dragon maiden had already gotten enlightened, after all these things about the dragons and how the dragon creatures are not fit to be enlightened, but they did, and there were many of them. In chapter 13, it started off with 2 bodhisattvas of this world, of the Saha world. It was the Medicine King Bodhisattva, and there was a 大乐说 was this is other bodhisattva that I don't know how to translate the name. I think it was the great something. Anyway, important, okay, important bodhisattva. And both of them, they actually begged to the Buddha and said, please, we would vow to the Buddha, to our master, to our teacher, that we would preach and uphold the teachings even after the Buddha had passed away. That was all fine, right? 2 of them, and then there were 80,000. Okay, they all said the same vow, which is wonderful. And then the arhats, or the other 500, the other disciples, they made the vow too. They said, oh, wonderful. All these bodhisattvas, they made their vow. I think they look around and said, we better make a vow too. So then they go off to the Buddha and say, we make our vow too. Our vow is we're going to go off to the other world and we're going to spread the Dharma there, right? And then there are the 2,000 people that said, if they can make the vow like that, so can we. So then they go up there and say, Buddha, we're going to make the same vow. We're going to go to the other world, and then we're going to spread the Dharma there. So chapter 13 already introduces the idea of going off to another world to spread the Dharma. Now, if you go back to the beginning of chapter 13, you will see that the Buddha didn't say anything. But in fact, Buddha was looking around and he saw, and I kid you not, okay, he already saw billions and billions of Nayuta, which is the huge infinite number of bodhisattvas. In that chapter, Buddha already saw these bodhisattvas. They already all have made the vow in their mind to stay in the Saha world to transform the beings of the Saha world. But the gist of this chapter was nobody said anything. They're like waiting. And in this chapter, the bodhisattva were there, sitting there, and said, I already made the vow to stay in this world, to pass and to uphold the teachings. And I'm in this world, okay? But Buddha should already know my thinking, so I'm not going to say anything. So they all kept quiet, and the Buddha just looked at them, know that that's what they are thinking, but say nothing. Now these bodhisattvas continue to think, I will, of course, make my vow known to everybody when I am asked. And of course, Buddha didn't ask. And therefore, at the end, finally, these 60 billion, whatever, 70 billion Nayuta number of bodhisattvas, they all stood up and they made the vow to stay in this world, in the Saha world, and spread the Dharma and uphold the teachings. That was in chapter 13. And then they go on to say how difficult it will be, but they will stay. That was the gist of chapter 13. See, you can imagine, that's why Master keep on going back to chapter 11, to 12, to 13, because they're all related to what we're about to see in chapter 15. So now 13 is over, going into 14. Now the cause to go into 14 was that in 13, many people said, I don't want to go, I want to go to the other world because in the Saha world, it's really difficult. And then there were even more bodhisattva that says, I'm staying here because it's very difficult. So the only conclusion we can get is over here, it's very difficult. And so how difficult it is, what are we going to do? That's why the cause to chapter 14 was 13. They said how difficult it was and how unbearable it must be. And that was the cause. So in chapter 14, the joyous and the peaceful practices, it was Manjushri asking the Buddha, if it's so difficult, what can we do to keep joyous and peaceful practices and stay in this world to do what we need to do so that we don't have to worry, so that we don't have to say to other people, we're staying because it's difficult. No, we're staying because it's difficult and we know how to get through the problems. So that was the entire chapter 14. And that was 3 months. It took Master 3 months to talk about how to be peaceful and joyous. And we know the truth. She's still not peaceful and joyous. She just spoke for 3 months and tell us how. But in reality, it was still very, very, very difficult. So the key point is 11, 12, 13, and all the way to 14. It's the culmination of all the things that happen in the front. 14 is telling us how we can be peaceful and joyous, and therefore do not worry, even though it will be difficult, but do not worry. So at the end of chapter 14, which was in June, that was before Master left for the trip around Taiwan. That was, the effect of that is what we have now, which is chapter 15. Now, coming into chapter 15, the first thing that we heard of is now that everyone, okay, Buddha tells everybody how to make joy and also make peaceful minds in this world when it's so difficult. The first one that volunteered to come is who? It's the bodhisattvas from other worlds. And they said, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And Buddha just said, no, not you, not you. No, I don't want you. Well, he didn't say that. He didn't say, I don't want you. But he just says, well, you know, not you. This is not what we're looking for. And Master, and this is covered last week, but it was, what are the reasons? And Master basically said that the reasons are to safeguard the vows, okay, the vows of this world, and also so that they don't feel like, oh, now they're here, so I don't really have to do anything. Also, and also in other worlds there are other responsibilities, right? Now they're coming here, that means they're slacking off in the other world, and that's no good, right? And there is also little basis in affinity. And this is what I want to focus on. See, all these things are talked about in the previous chapters, but we didn't realize, we didn't pick it up, okay? So for example, the little basis in affinity, it sounds so true, right? But now that I just explained to you what happened at the end of chapter 12, you understand that little basis in affinity happened exactly at the end of chapter 12. When the wisdom accumulated bodhisattva, he's a bodhisattva, that means he's pretty smart, right? He's pretty wise. But he had no clue that what Bodhisattva Manjushri is doing in the Dragon Palace, because there's no affinity. And all he knew was, how can these sea creatures ever be able to be enlightened? They are not easy to be learned. They're not easy to be enlightened. They don't understand this. Yet the affinity, if it's strong, will be able to overcome these things. And that showed off in chapter 12. So all these reasons are already prefaced in the previous chapter. So in the second part, other worlds, other responsibilities, same thing. We already have the disciples in this world. They're making the vows to go to other worlds. Now, why did the Buddha say nothing? Because you guys didn't do the work here. How can you go to the other worlds? Same thing on the other flip side. Other bodhisattvas coming here to tell the Buddha, they want to come here and they want to cultivate the blessings, the fields of blessings here. The Buddha is thinking, well, wait a minute. You have your own teacher. You have your own Buddha in your world, and you have your responsibilities there. you probably didn't get permission to come over here, young man. You should probably go back there because I don't think your teacher said okay. Just like the arhats and also the disciples here in the Saha world, they said they made the vow, but the Buddha said nothing. The Buddha said nothing. It was only for them to slowly understand. It was overcoming their fears. But if you go back to chapter 13, Buddha said nothing that they cannot go. He said nothing, but he was waiting. He was waiting for the other ones to raise their hands up and say, I volunteer to stay. So perhaps these disciples eventually do venture into other worlds. And then in the other world, they will be stopped by the Buddha of that world and say, no, you didn't tell. You didn't get permission, right? You just come here on your own. So in another word, all these 4 reasons are already told to us in the previous chapters that we just didn't pick up the clues. We were just thinking, oh, what a very nice story about the dragon maiden. We didn't realize that it was talking about, if you want to come and help this world, you better know about the people in this world. You better know about the creatures in this world. If you look at these sea creatures as sea creatures that will never be enlightened, then you are not fit to come in here. You need to come here, know the people, know the living beings, know the sentient beings, and then you will understand. Okay, and lastly, do not slack off. And I think this is something that's very important, because if you have more help coming in, you tend to, more slack off. And that's very, very true. So I think it's something that's 4 reasons that Master mentioned. And of course, also mentioned today, is never gives up. Buddha never gives up on us. In that, even if there are so many of us in this world that failed to see that our responsibility is here, is now in this world, and no matter how difficult, we should stay here. We should continue to work on it. Even though we feel we are not confident, even though we feel that we don't know how, even though we feel that we are not capable, yet Buddha never gives up on us. And I think this is the one thing that I found out of all the reasons. It's something that touches me the most. All those things, all the previous 4 are all based on us. We have to guard our vow. We have our own responsibilities here. And I wouldn't know who they are. So if I go there, I wouldn't be able to help them. And I need to be really determined and also diligent. But this part is about the teacher. The teacher does not give up on us, on this world, knows that this world needs the people of this world to cultivate and never give up. There will be people coming out. So, and that's what I found to be something that's very touching. Now, a side story. Last week, we had a chance to sit down, and Master was able to give us a lot more about what she thought about something. And at one moment, she asked us, all of us in the audience, she asked us. So for those of you in Malaysia, you would know that I've been talking about the roots of the tree and how deep the root must go in order for it to stay really strong. And so that no matter what kind of wind comes, it will not blow over, it will not kill the tree. And so Master is essentially asking us, did that wind really disturb you? Did that wind really uproot your confidence? Are you still confident in what you're doing? Do you still believe? Do you still have faith in what you're doing? And she was asking to many of us, about 20 or 30 people around that time. And she looked around and nobody really said anything. So I thought, being a very vocal person, I just said, no, Master, I don't think we waver. We might have hit some difficulty, but we never wavered. And more importantly, because Master never gave up on us. So how can we give up on ourselves? We can't. And then I go on and mention this chapter. I said, just like in this chapter, the Buddha never gave up on the bodhisattvas of the Saha world, and never gave up on the sentient beings of this world. They should not give up on themselves, and we should not give up on ourselves. And then Master continued and said, that's right, exactly. And then she said, just like years ago when she was building the hospital, the Huang hospital, she said, just like when she was building the hospital, she did not take the money from the Japanese businessman. And at that moment, it was all the things sort of tied together that, that was more than 30 years ago, right? Our hospital was completed in 1986. So it marks the 31st anniversary this year. So that was more than 31 years ago. And I'm sure it was even a lot longer than that. That, probably took 5, 6, 7 years for them to plan and get the money and fundraise and all that. And at that time, she already had this idea that she's not going to give up on this land. She said, I'm not going to give up on the people of this land. I believe in the people of this land that they can come up with the money and the fund to do this, not relying on other outside forces, that we can do it ourselves. And this is just something that I want to share with you, that all these things are there. All those stories that you have heard are something that, just like the manifestations of all the Buddhas, they came back. If you remember back in the chapter 11, the emergence of the treasure tower, one of the key aspects of opening the door to the tower was that all the manifestations have to come back, okay, of the Buddha. And Master explained that to be the Dharma, the path. All the manifestations have to come back. And that's how I felt, that we are now looking at the Lotus Sutra, but all the things that we knew before, all the things that we learned before that we didn't know were connected, somehow are connected, and now it's coming back. Just like chapter 11 is coming back, chapter 12 is coming back, 13, 14, and now we're in 15. So that's what it meant. If you go back to chapter 11 and read that, there were 3 transformations to change this world to Pure Land so that all those things can come back. You can imagine that now we're up to chapter 15, and when we're reading these stories and all these things that we have learned before, that we have heard before about Tzu Chi are now coming back, you need a lot of room to put all these stories together. And that's why the Buddha did the 3 transformations to make this world big enough to fit all the manifestations of all the Buddhas from around. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you missed out on all the very exciting stories since chapter 10. I think we began when it was chapter 10. So chapter 10 until now, it was only 5 chapters, but it was very, very exciting. So if you didn't know what I'm talking about, go back to the chapter 11, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You will begin to see a lot of traces that were around, but we just didn't realize were already there. Okay, so before I have 3 minutes, so I'm moving into the second topic, hidden figures. They are not really hidden, as in that they are actually quite big. But what do all the numbers mean? And I want to quickly go through that. All the numbers, whether it's huge, we are talking about infinitely big numbers, astronomical numbers. The Nayuta and the Ganges, the Ganges, the stand of the Ganges River. You can imagine it's very, very, very big. It's so big that I don't even know how, it's so big that the word big can't explain how big it is. So what do all the numbers mean? Now, I try to put together sort of the dictorial meaning, which is the literal meaning, and also what it try to expand. So it means the disciples, right? It talks about, and that's the literal meaning. It actually says so in the Sutra, that these are the family in Dharma. And these are and Master explained also that these are the disciples. In chapter 15, it was talked about that there are many of these bodhisattvas, and each one of them are already the teachers of the Dharma. They already preach, they're already teachers. And then each one of them has even more disciples and followers or other families in Dharma. So there's a lot of them, and it varies. Some of them has 60,000 Nayuta, some of them has billions and millions and thousands, hundreds, and then tens, and then ones, and then just no one too. So all these are the disciples and followers, and many different numbers of family and number. And so it really goes back to true emptiness and wondrous existence. And this is something that I think yesterday, it was a lot more difficult to grasp, because yesterday it was more about void, emptiness, and what's in space, and what's the capacity, and so on and so forth. I think it's also the same thing. In terms of the physical world, we probably get to know more about this. In the physical world, you could have all these stars, all the particles in the world, and you can slice it very finely into very fine particles. And almost the principles is saying that the principles exist, whether it's in so many or whether it becomes just one. One particle, one atom, one molecule, one whatever, the most smallest single unit. So you can see the numbers that was counting down, right? From very, very big to very, very, very infinitesimally small to eventually just one. And that is trying to balance between many and very few. And whatever the number, it always has the principles within. And it also shows the passive cultivation. And this is something that I mentioned also in Malaysia as well, as we know that there are different religious practices. We know that there are different beliefs and different faiths. So all these are infinite Dharma paths. There are those who are willing and who are able to have thousands and thousands of followers. And there are those who uphold the path themselves very diligently. Whatever the path, whatever the Dharma path, they will all come back and they will all be considered to be enlightened beings. And that's why they show up. Some of them lead a group, followers of thousands and thousands and infinite number. Some of them only has 1,000. Some of them has 500. Some of them has 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or none. Whatever the path, we're all pointing to one. Okay, so it means open up our hearts, open up our minds. Don't reject others just because they're different from us. They're all the same. We're all the same on this path. So don't just reject them because it's the same. So what do all the numbers mean? I really think that towards the end, all the numbers, it all goes down to eventually one. All comes back to one. And what is this one? There are many different interpretations. There are many different ways to think about this. And I think of this as the person who is bringing this to me. This is the one for me. Now, I think that we all have different one, but whatever this one is, this is the seed that is in our mind. This is the seed that will grow, that will sprout through and break through the ground. And whatever that is, keep that. That is the one that is going to break through the ground. So our master, or in Chinese, my master, I'm not talking about Master Cheng Yen the person. I'm talking about the master, which is the Dharma, which is the Buddha, which is the precepts, which is all the principles that guide me, or one principle that guides me. That's the true master. Now, that could be a person, that could be a principle, an idea, a faith, a belief, whatever it is, hold on to it. That is your one, that is your seed, but also grow deep to it. Is this seed come from somewhere? Where does this seed come from? If it's a person, what gave her that belief? What gave her that strength? That's something that we should always think about. So it all comes back to one. Do we know what that one is? That's the path for us to find out. And cultivation is about finding out what that one is and then become that one. And that's always intrinsic nature, that's always there. And so we realize that in the Russian doll, if you keep on opening, you find out there's something inside that's more and more and more and more and more. Eventually, there will only be one left. What is that? What drives you? What is your purpose in life? What makes you want to do all this? That's the important part. And I was going to stop and end my presentation here until I had to say something, until this. So this is what we did this morning in our translation effort. And I think Sister Xiuqing already puts it on the WhatsApp chat. This is what we did. Now, we had a platform And it used to be that, you know, one person would do the translation, and then everybody else will view it, right? This is just like, you know, and the other day I was talking to Brother Yoping. I was saying that, well, how do we try to, you know, make sense of all these different number of followers? And I said, well, imagine this, right? We could sit there and listen. Now it would just be me benefiting. Or at the very same moment, we could take us out of there and then begin to do some translation, so more other people, our family in Dharma, can come with us as well into this journey, onto this path to Lotus Sutra. So you can imagine Buddha or our master Cheng Yen is opening the door, and the path is called the Lotus Sutra. Who is going to walk the path? These are the people that are the ones that's emerging from the ground, breaking through the ground. So if you are sitting there listening, which is what I do from Sunday, Monday, all the way to Thursday, that's what I do. Sit there listening, sometimes dozing off, sometimes taking my notes, sometimes joyously, happily listening because I found something that was wondrous. The only benefited person at that moment was me. I was walking along on this path. Yeah, there are many people, but they're all individuals. And we're walking on the path of that's called the Lotus Sutra. But on Fridays and Saturdays, we have the privilege to be able to come out. And instead of just me walking, we are walking with others, hand in hand. We're not just individuals. We are hand in hand together on this path together. And this is another frontier where not only are we hand in hand, but there's no longer one person leading. It's a group of us doing this together. Now, I was only able to capture this particular one. There's a lot of anonymous animals, and this just shows you this is a sentient world, sentient beings. But I was only able to capture 10 total viewers, but at the peak it was 14, and it tells you, trust me, in Hualien, how many people we have? 4 doing this. 4. Yeah, I'm on it. 2, 3, 4. Hualien, we only have 4. That means 10 others, more than double the amount of people that we have in this platform at that time coming to see this. Some of you contributed, some of you watched, but we were together at that time on this path. And don't you think that if there is a scene in your mind about the emergence from the ground, don't you think that we're emerging together at that moment? On that path together at that moment? We're no longer just, oh, I got it, and then boop, that's you. No, we are together coming out. And that's what this platform is doing. Even if you just translate 1 sentence or 2, or even if you did really poorly and you think that's the worst translation ever, but we were there together. And that's what's called family in Dharma, 眷属. Now we get it, because this is exactly happening. So that's what, instead of the Russian dolls, this is what I want to finish my presentation, my sharing for today. And we will continue, because I think we could do a lot better. Not just the number of people, but the quality of the translation. And we're gonna improve how we're gonna do what family does. We're gonna gather and we're gonna do this together. Learn how to be better. I am not good, you're not good enough, we're not good enough yet, but we are on that path. And that's what cultivation is about. On the right path, to the right direction, to the right target. And the most importantly is the journey. And I'm very happy to have you on the journey with us. And even though it says 10, but it's really more than that. So I thank you all for joining, and I thank you all for having this wonderful opportunity for having to have me share here. And that's my sharing for today. Thank you. Okay. With that, I think we're gonna go into our sharings. So,
brother,
take over. Thank you.
Okay, there is no sharing from center today, but we have 3 questions. Maybe we can go to the questions.
Okay, we're gonna go through the questions, and let me just bring up the questions right now. And the first question will be answered by Brother Yo Ping An. Let's see, how do I do this? Okay. 这怎么弄？怎么不能 share？ 对啊，Right, good morning, all brothers and sisters. Okay, thank you for the questions, and then I'll be going through question 1. So yes, on dedication of merits, indeed, we had mentioned a little on last week, and yes, we often talk about merit in terms of like transfer of merit or dedication of merit. It seems as if we are expecting something from our works. Well, our master always taught us that we should not expect anything in return whenever we perform our works. And so why are we still seeking the merit? And so yes, like what you said, that in fact, really, we never expect anything in return, including the merit. In fact, I must also say before that this merit, it's just like, you know, when we learn to cycle, because we cycle many times, and so we learned how to cycle. And this learning, this ability, the gaining of this ability to cycle is like the merit, and it comes from the practice, because we practice and therefore we gain that ability. And gaining the ability is not as if we are seeking it, or we are seeking that merit and therefore we do it. It's just that it comes so naturally, just because we are practicing it, And what is the merit that we gain? You know, that more open heart, the more compassionate heart that thinks for others, that could empathize in others, that very natural tendency to help others. All these are gained through practicing, because we keep practicing in our works of charity, in all our different missions, because we keep practicing our hearts, and so we gain that blessing in the forms of the virtue is a very personal attainment, that our heart is more wide and open, and that is the merits that we are talking about. And so it's not as if someone is counting our good deeds. No, I did 10 today, and so I have this quota to use to negate away some of my karma. 10 to minus that 1,000 millions of karma that I have. No, it's not in this kind of numbers, quantitatively, that we are trying to negate, with the good deeds that we do, because we are not expecting anything in return, and so we do not seek these good deeds, but we do it because we want to, because we see the suffering, and when we want to relieve it, and so we do it. But in the course of doing it, very naturally, the environment that we are in, the suffering that we felt reduces. When we do good deeds, naturally we will have better relationship with the people around us. And with the better relationship with the people around us, naturally we will have lesser conflicts. And with lesser conflicts, of course, we will meet lesser difficulties. And wouldn't that feel as if it's lesser karma, or a more smoother path? It feels as if it's the blessings coming back, and that's just natural. It's not because someone is looking on us, counting our good deeds, and so our path is smoother. But it's just because our good deeds itself gains us that environment that makes our path smoother, and that's just natural and logical.
Yeah, and so in that way, we are not seeking the merits, we are not counting, and we do not ask. And therefore, even if our good deeds sometimes do not bring us good results or good environment, sometimes after doing good deeds, we still meet some difficulties. That's okay, because it's not supposed to give us. It's through a lot of good affinities, and sometimes we will get, and that's natural. But it's not compulsory, and so we do not seek. And when we don't have the heart of seeking, then we are not attached to it, and we are not attached to it, then we are free. We are free. We are free from all this counting and then trying to no. So then we are more free and happy. Yeah. So I think, yeah. So that's my answer to this dedication of merits. Right. Question 2.
Okay, so let me follow up with what Brother Yoping said. Actually, merit is not something that you count. You know, for example, it's not something like if I didn't sleep for 2 hours and then I need to make it up by having 2 more hours of sleep, but rather it's something that you have, that is not, you cannot just give it away. It's something about, it's not, and the thing about this is negating sounds so weird in that now that I am more, for example, I cannot say now that I am more compassionate, so now I'm allowed to be bad for 2 days because I have been compassionate for 2 days. You know, once you have been compassionate, you're not gonna go back to 2 days of being bad, because that goes against what being compassionate is about. And therefore, it's not about negating each other, but it's about slowly improving and then becoming a better self. So that is not a commodity that you can trade and you can deduct and you can gain, etc. It's just who we are. You know, you don't say he becomes that much nicer because he was nice to me for 2 days. And then he, you know, it's not a point system. So let us not look at merit. Like, let us not look at wisdom in the light of counting it. Now I have 3 days of Xun Fa Xiang, and therefore I'm 3 days wiser. Are we ready? So what I wanted to bring out is that's really not the way to see this. However, how are we seeing this? If in that 1 day of Xun Fa Xiang, I really put my time and I really think about this, or I really go back to all the things before and then connect it with all the things that was previously, then that 1 day actually it's a culmination of hundreds of experiences before that. Then this was exactly what Master said yesterday when she said that one year or 100 years in our lifetime is equal to 1 day in a different world, in the world of other beings, heavenly beings. And therefore, our life to these heavenly beings are so fleeting, like a second, a very brief instant. Yet, if we, from that brief instant, can connect all these experiences from before, it's not about how long that 1 second or that 1 instant is, but it's about how much energy we combine and all the life experiences from that point on. It's about how much we can gain from that. So it's just like reading from the previous 12 chapters, 11 chapters, 12 chapters, 13, 14. We are just reading it. But at the same time, we're accumulating something. But it's out in the void because we can't put the dots together yet. But it's today. For me, it's today. When you put the dots together, then all the chapters are right away together. Then all the work you have done in the past culminate into one. That's something that that is more wonderful than counting is something to be negatable. Okay, so that's just my brief view. Is once again, it's very void, it's very theoretical, it's very conceptual, but it's something that I think let's not try to quantify it too much, otherwise we would be trapped. Okay, so on the second question, this is something that I want to go through a little bit more discussion. On hearing the explanation by a sister who wanted to divorce a husband who kept mistresses. Notice mistresses. Okay, that's more than one. Okay, now master advised her, yes, you could divorce him, but in next life, the effect will be 120% with interest. If this life, you can bear with him, there is a 20% discount. What is Master Cheng and why does Master Cheng discourage it by saying this? 120% compounded interest versus 20% discount. Now, before I go in, I have to set this record straight. Okay, so yes, 120% compounded interest and 20% discount was something that was used as a way of a simple dharma, daily dharma for us to realize something. But it's not used solely in this experience, in this particular story. If I remember correctly, there was this story where we have a husband who did indeed kept a mistress, and left the wife, cheated on the wife, and the wife was not really forgiving, but something horrible had happened to this husband, and that eventually begs for the forgiveness of the wife. But the wife, because she was hurt, was contemplating if she should accept him and help him get through his difficulty. And then she came to Master, and Master explained to her, you could divorce or you could punish him, but in the next lifetime, what that means is in the next lifetime, what you did, all these anger, it will come back with more. However, if we are happily accepting what has happened and forgive, then we are actually much happier even with the same outcome. That story eventually continued, where the wife heeded to the advice and not only accepted this ill husband, I think it was some kind of terminal illness, and not only that, but thanked the mistress for taking care of the husband, and eventually, I think in the family of the mistress, they also needed some help, and the wife helped. Now, that was the gist of the story. So when we take the snapshot of a particular quote, we have to be able to, we must quote the complete story to understand what the master was advising, okay? So no, the master wasn't advising that for all of the wives that have a husband that have mistresses, that you should listen to this and say, in the next lifetime, the effect could be 120% with the interest, which means if you have, if you have one mistress, that means the next life you would have 1.2 more because it's 120% with the interest. No, it doesn't mean that, okay? So asking the question to not mislead anybody, we need to have the stories as well. Now, what does it mean to have 120% compounding interest versus 20% discount? I had given a sharing before about the cause and effect and the consequences. Same thing. What it means is that if we can change our mind and thought, even if it's the same thing that happened to us, if we change it to the mindset of opening our hearts, be grateful, and be understanding of the things and understand karma, then we will be able to accept it more readily and we would be able to accept the outcome. And therefore, we will not be as hurt. And what that meant was, I think I gave this example before. If there's an apple, if your friend gives you an apple, if somebody gives you an apple and you take a bite and the apple is very, very, very sour. Now you could have two reactions. One, you could imagine that the person giving it to you understands that you have been talking for a very long time and it's a very hot day, and therefore he gave you the only apple that he had, wanting to help you. If you think this way, even though the apple is sour, but you will be overflown with gratitude. So even though the apple is sour, it tastes better than how sour it really is. And that's what it meant by 20% discount. It doesn't taste that sour, even though it's the same apple. On the other hand, if you're thinking, it's so sour, why couldn't you give me a sweeter one? Don't you know that I like sweet apples? Don't you know that I hate apples and you still give me an apple? Are you trying to poison me? Am I Snow White? You know, all these things that you're thinking, and then that apple tastes a lot worse. That's what it meant by 120% compounded interest. It tastes the same. It's the same apple, but it tastes worse. Because not only does it taste worse in your mouth, it tastes horribly in your heart and your mind. That's what it meant. Same apple. Are you going to go with 20% discount, or are you going to go with 120% compounding interest? That's what this means. Going back to this story, it's not to say, you know, if there is domestic violence, if the person was abusive, if the person was horrible and have no regret and does not repent for all the sins, that one should still do something. Okay, so I don't know how this works. I've never been married, so I don't really know how couples work things out. But this example by no means is telling you one way or the other. It just tells you that sometimes the same thing that happens to us, if you look at it differently, you will be able to accept it easier. But if you look at it harshly, it will not only be bitter or sour, but it will also hurt in your heart and in your mind. So that's my answer to, that's my response to this question. And I hope, let's not take these numbers too literally, just like what's happening in the Lotus Sutra. Don't take it too literally and be trapped. Why did Master say this to that wife? If it were me, I would leave him in the heartbeat. That's not the point. The point is, have we learned from our lessons? If we have, then it's all the better. But if we haven't, it really doesn't matter what you do. The same thing is going to happen again. And if we don't take it as a lesson, then the next time it's going to come back with interest. That's all it's trying to say. So we don't have time for the third question, but I would like to have Master De Huang, who is here with us today, who has something to share with us in the last moments of today's sharing. Let's sincerely welcome and thanks Master De Huang for sharing for today. Thank you, everybody, and hoping that next week we could hear from all of your sharing as well, and your sharings and your heartful stories. Thank you.
感恩 Master De Huang, 感恩 Brother Joe Huang and Brother Yo Ping. But before we end the session, okay, maybe short sharing. We are very grateful to Brother Joe Huang and Hua Lian Dharma team for this for the weekly talk, and especially the new link which is set up today. We understand that Hua Lian has put up a lot of effort for this link because they have thought of this a way to improve our understanding in Dharma and to open the door wider so more people could come in and have the opportunity to do the translation.
There's no sound.
No sound. Yeah. Sorry, can hear? No sound.
Okay, we're okay here. We're okay. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, short one. Okay, can hear us? Still no sound.
Yeah, we can. Thank you. Please continue.
Okay. Yeah, we are very grateful to Hualian team for coming up with the new link today. So we hope that more people could have the opportunity to join us. Regardless whether the person is slow or fast, you can, so long there is a view, you can come and join. So we hope more people can listen to Master Live session. Very grateful to the link. We can see a lot of effort being put in. We can feel the love and compassion by our Hualien Dharma team. To those who could participate today, I am sure they could feel that. And now that the door is open wide to everyone, please, anyone who is keen, please, you can message me. We can share the link and then also guide you through how to join us. This is not a daily activity. It's on weekly basis. So we hope more could seize the opportunity. With more participation, we hope it could move to another level, which is more on the learning and discussion platform. So to all Pusa, we are most blessed people in the world because we have this opportunity, not only hearing the Dharma, but also we have the opportunity to connect deeper and help to hopefully to promote the teaching. Guide everyone. Okay, so before we end the session, let us pay our respects for the teachings we hear from Hualien Dharma team. Let us please make 3 bows to the Buddha and Master Zhen Yan as we depart to apply these teachings in our daily lives. Let us pay our respects to our teachers of life universal truth. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. And a bow to our beloved Sư Phụ Huang who could join us today. Cảm ơn. Cảm ơn everyone.